Welcome, virtual voting Tuesday, folks. Green Day. I know I'd shared with most of you that I would be Zooming today. However, as it turns out, I actually have some meetings and that's not going to work. So I did not want to leave you with nothing from me. So I'm going to at least walk through chapters 24 to 28 with you. I'm not going to go too specifically into chapters 27 and 28 because I don't want to spoil that reading for you. But you will have some questions there. You'll see in the module that you will be responsible for completing. But I want to talk, there's some things that I jotted down here. I have 9 points, 9 parts from the novel in those chapters that I want to at least reference, and in some cases, do a little bit of reading. So in chapter 24 is where we get the news. Calpurnia and Alexandra are hosting a gathering for Maycomb women. And Scout is actually attempting to appear ladylike and also assist in this to the best of her ability. And it is at this meeting that, among other things, we learn that Tom Robinson has been shot 17 times when trying to escape prison. And I wanted to look at a line specifically, if you have your textbook, on page 310. And Scout is kind of listening to the conversations these white women, wealthy white women, are having. And Mrs. Merriweather is talking, among other things, about the way her specific servants have behaved after Tom Robinson's death. And Scout jumps into a conversation on 310 toward the top if you have your book. She says, "Excuse me, Mrs. Merriweather," I interrupted, "are you all talking about Mayla Ewell?" And she says, "May, no, child. That dark man's wife, Tom's wife, Tom." And then Scout cuts her off and says, "Robinson, ma'am." And think about this here. So Scout sees Tom as a human being. Does Mrs. Merriweather, kind of in the middle of the page here as well. Mrs. Merriweather, same person talking here. "Nothing, Jean Louise," she said in stately Largo. "The cooks and field hands are just dissatisfied. But they're settling down now. They grumbled all next day after that trial." Mrs. Merriweather has the audacity to complain about these black individuals working for white people, that they have bad attitudes after Tom's death. And you just kind of think about this, like, how entitled and how superior can she possibly feel that she is there, Mrs. Merriweather? But Scout has this ability, as she's taught from her father, among others perhaps. She sees Tom Robinson as a person. And do you feel like some of these entitled, wealthy women have the same feeling there? And sadly, I don't think Mrs. Merriweather really gets it. It reminds me, though, a quote from one of my favorite movies, The Breakup, which has Jennifer Aniston and Vince Vaughn in it. "I want you to want to do the dishes," is kind of the attitude Mrs. Merriweather has there. Like, nobody likes working, right? Like, why would they have to have good attitudes, much less the day after this terrible thing went down with Tom Robinson? Later in this chapter, and you should have already read this, so this shouldn't be a spoiler for you, Atticus will come in and he will say, they shot him. Atticus leaned against something here momentarily. See if I can find this quote here. Atticus leaned against the refrigerator. I'm on 315. Pushed up his glasses and rubbed his eyes. You have a question about this on your sheet for today. "We had such a good chance." Atticus was optimistic that they would have a chance to retrial and to appeal. "I told him what I thought, but I couldn't in truth say that we had more than a good chance. I guess Tom was tired of white men's chances, preferred to take his own." In this moment, Atticus references Tom has a choice. He can try to trust the judicial system, which has already failed him once, or he can take his own chance here, and he can run. In the middle of that page there on 315, Atticus does mention that had he had 2 good arms, he would have in fact made it over the fence, but they put 17 bullet holes in him. It seems like that is certainly more than was necessary. Chapter 25 then, just on the next page, a couple pages later, starts on 319. Really not a lot going on here, but there is this roly-poly bug. And Scout at the beginning of the chapter there on page 319, Jim says, "Don't do that," set him on the back steps. Scout wanted to step on him. And kind of think about this. This roly-poly bug, it's innocent. It's not harming anyone. Jim takes issue with Scout harming this bug. Innocent, not harming anyone. Kind of cute even. Who does that sound like? Why does Jim have an issue with this? Dramatic pause. Tom, right? Chapter 26, I want to read the opening of chapter 26 here real quick. So this is on page 324 of the physical textbook. School started, and so did our daily trips past the Radley place. Jim was in 7th grade and went to high school, beyond the grammar school building. I was now in 3rd grade, and our routines were so different. I only walked to school with Jim in the mornings and saw him at mealtimes. He went out for football, but he was too slender and too young yet to do anything but carry the team water buckets. Water boy. This he did with enthusiasm. Most afternoons, he was seldom home before dark. The Radley place had ceased to terrify me, but it was no less gloomy, no less chilly under its great oaks, and no less uninviting. Mr. Nathan Radley could still be seen on a clear day walking to and from town. We knew Boo was there for the same old reason. Nobody had seen him carried out yet. I sometimes felt a twinge of remorse when passing by the old place, at ever having taken part in what must have been sheer torment to Arthur Radley. What reasonable recluse, once children peeping through his shutters, delivering greetings on the end of a fishing pole, wandering in his collars at night. And yet I remembered 2 Indian head pennies, chewing gum, soap dolls, a rusty medal, a broken watch, and chain, $3.25. Jim must have put them away somewhere. I stopped and looked at the tree one afternoon. The trunk was swelling around its cement patch. The patch itself was turning yellow. We had almost seen him a couple times, a good enough score for anybody. As you get through the rest of the novel here, Scout has basically just settled for the fact that she will never get to see Boo. She no longer is scared as she walks past the Radley place, and she goes as far to say she feels remorse. She feels bad for the bother that they toward the first half of the novel, especially the tormenting in her words there. Why did I read that? May or may not come back to that later. A little bit lower on 325, but I still looked for him each time I went by. Maybe someday we would see him. I imagined how it would be when it happened. He'd just be sitting in the swing when I came along. How do you do, Mr. Arthur, I would say, as if I had said it every afternoon of my life. Evening, Jean Louise, he would say, as if he had said it every afternoon of my life. Pretty right spell we're having, isn't it? Yes, sir, right pretty, I would say, and go on. She says it was only a fantasy. We would never see him. He probably did go out when the moon was down and gaze upon Miss Stephanie Crawford. I'd pick somebody else to look at, but that was his business. He would never gaze at us. Chapter 27. And I am not going to go into great details here because I want you to read 27 and 28 and complete the work for today. Additionally, finish the novel for next class. We will have a discussion, and I think it'll be a lot of fun to wrap up the novel on Thursday in class. But chapter 27, Bob Ewell is going to get a job. You'll notice on page 332 in the textbook, second paragraph, if you're on the PDF of the chapter, a WPA job. So during the Depression, basically jobs were created just so the unemployed could have money. So he does find a job and he loses it soon after, and he blames Atticus for losing his job. Bob Ewell wanted to discuss Atticus getting his job. He knew the way to the office. Atticus brushes that off. But Bob Ewell's behavior here is going to be concerning, and I think we've referenced this in class, but think about the individuals who Bob Ewell feels he has an issue with. So, there are some people still living, obviously, that made him look pretty bad. Among those, Atticus, Judge Taylor, Helen Robinson, and the first several, maybe even 5-6 pages here, describe some of the behaviors that Bob, in which he is partaking here in this chapter. Link Diaz has given Helen Robinson a job. If you don't remember Link, he was the person who employed Tom, stood up in the courtroom and objected and almost got kicked out. But there's a question on your sheet today just regarding Bob's behavior and what direction he's going then. And then, like I said, Helen gets a job. I want to read a little bit on 339. So when you get there, obviously, you'll read this as well. But 339, there's going to be a pageant. And it's the Halloween season, so kids are going to dress up appropriately. Right now, kind of what we are doing. In the middle of 339, when Halloween came, I assumed that the whole family would be present to watch me perform. Scout is going to be dressed up as a ham. Yeah, she is pork, as it would be here. So she wants to show off that costume. And I'm going to have you kind of read. You want to read how that's made. It's made with like chicken wire, which if you're not familiar with that, maybe give it a Google. When Halloween came, middle 339, I assumed that the whole family would be present to watch me perform, but I was disappointed. Atticus said as tactfully as he could, he just didn't think he could stand a pageant tonight. He was all in. He was tired. He had been in Montgomery for a week and had come home late that afternoon. He thought Jim might escort me if I asked him. Aunt Alexandra said she had to go to bed early. So, in other words, Jim is going to be responsible in the dark for walking Scout to and from school for this pageant. Bottom of 339 there. Aunt Alexandra is a little skeptical with what is going to happen here. But at the bottom, Scout is going to perform practice, I guess you could say. So Atticus and Aunt Alexandra and Calpurnia can see her in her costume and say the line that she has to say. Very bottom of 339. Suggested I give the family a preview in the living room. So Jim squeezed me into my costume, stood at the living room door, called out, "Pork," exactly as Mrs. Merriweather would have done, and I marched in. Atticus and Aunt Alexandra were delighted. I repeated my part for Calpurnia in the kitchen. She said I was wonderful. I wanted to go across the street to show Miss Maudie, but Jim said she'd probably be at the pageant anyway. After that, it didn't matter whether they went or not. Jim said he would take me. And then a question here on your sheet refers to the very last sentence on page 341, the last sentence in chapter 27. Thus began our longest journey together. What literary device does that seem to be? Dramatic pause. Foreshadowing. Does it seem like, based on this last paragraph, after that it didn't matter whether they went or not? Jim said he would take me. Thus began our longest journey together. In chapter 28, you will see, really read, maybe you will picture in your mind this journey, but you will read this journey from beginning to end. Children will leave and attempt to return home in chapter 28. And then my guess is, when you read the final paragraph of chapter 28, you will not want to stop reading until you have finished the novel. Couple really cool things we're going to talk about next class. I'm really excited for our discussion. Try to take some notes and have some good things that we can discuss in class next time we meet. So preview of chapter 28. Again, Jim is in charge of escorting Scout. There's a pageant, bobbing for apples. I think the kids have 30 cents apiece. They can play some games. And then somebody dies. Read through chapter 28 and then finish the novel for next class. Hello, Myra. My daughter just walked in. Do you want to say hi to the kids on the video? Come on. You want to take your mask off? Can you say hi to the kids on the video?
Hello.
It's Myra. Am I your favorite parent? You love me more than you love your mom?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes.
What if I give you a $20 bill?
No.
No. Okay. I tried, people. I tried. Hey, have a great virtual voting day. Finish the novel for next time. Complete that guided read. And I'm excited for our discussion next class. See you later.